Would you kindly like and subscribe? Powerful phrase, isn't it? Like and subscribe, that is. But doesn't it make you feel uncomfortable? Like, you're here to sit back and relax, not be another number in my analytics. It breaks the immersion of YouTube, peeling back the curtain and reminding you just how insignificant you are in the grand scheme of things. And that's what a moment like Would You Kindly does in a game. It drops the grand illusion and paints you as nothing more than a rat scurrying down a corridor. But you're enjoying yourself, aren't you? Completing objectives, mastering the combat, seeing the story. But then why do your eyes go wide when a game stops giving objectives to your character and starts giving commands to you? And why does killing Ryan make you feel so bad about yourself? That doesn't make any sense, you didn't have a choice. Well, of course you didn't. A man chooses. A slave
obeys.
BioShock is an immersive sim, which is a genre that sells itself on one promise above all others: freedom, giving you an immense amount of control in how you approach any situation. Build variety, plasmids, hell, even the stupid lockpicking is a little multiple choice game of its own. It even has little details like how it goes out of its way to teach you that electric attacks will chain through enemies standing in water, or letting you hack the circus of values to get lower prices. Details like that make Rapture feel like a place that rewards you for paying attention and that you've outsmarted the game. It's a totally unnecessary flourish, but what it's secretly doing is implanting the idea that the world is quietly responding to you, like you're in control. And then you meet the affable Atlas, a warm, sympathetic voice guiding you delicately through this god and king forsaken hell, always asking you to help him with his innocuous verbal tick.
Would you kindly lower that weapon for a minute? Would you kindly? Would you kindly? Would you kindly?
And despite never physically appearing, we want to help him, because he seems like the only sane man left beneath the sea, and only a psychopath would abandon the last normal person in a city of splices. So helping just feels like the only thing a decent person would do, without it even registering as a choice we're making.
Now, would you kindly find a crowbar or something?
And there's a linguistic brilliance in the trigger phrase being "would you kindly," because Atlas is smuggling in the fiction that you're being asked, so that the answer being yes feels like your own ideas and doing him a courtesy, and doing someone a courtesy is the one thing we're all taught to never refuse. And then when Atlas shrugs and gives up the act, it immediately recontextualizes all that freedom you thought you had, turning you from the player to the played.
There ain't no Atlas, kid. Never was.
It gives you a sinking feeling because it's a kind of accusation. See, a normal twist surprises you about another character, which in turn recontextualizes all their actions up to that point. Whereas BioShock does the same thing to you without asking your permission, so you feel complicit in helping the antagonist. But is that a rational feeling? It's not like you could have known ahead of time. Well, yes, because this is far from the first time you've taken orders from a disembodied voice without questioning it. We've all spent hundreds of hours following objective markers on a map, but we've never stopped to question who drew that map. So by the time you reach the lighthouse, obedience has become a reflex, one that Atlas found and exploited. And then the ironic thing is that once we're freed from Atlas's control, we finally get to find out what our freedom is actually worth. And the game plays exactly the same way it did before the reveal, which is the whole point. Nothing about the structure of the game changes. Hell, we're even more on rails because we get shackled to a little sister, and that's because the freedom of what we do was never Atlas's to take, because we never had it in the first place. The game was the thing controlling us the whole time, and it still is, but Atlas was the only part of it rude enough to say it out loud.
You are genetically conditioned to bark like a cocker spaniel when I said, would you kindly?
Okay, but characters being manipulated is a common twist in film, so why does it hit different in games? Because there's something movies physically can't do to you. If you've ever seen The Truman Show, Truman has total autonomy within the dome, and has no idea he's in captivity. It's a kind of blissful ignorance, and when he becomes aware of the world beyond his own, it's unsettling. It's like the same feeling I got when I watched The Matrix for the first time, and I could sympathize with Cypher, who wanted to have his memory erased and go back to living a lie. These characters are puppets who have their strings cut, and it's horrifying. When we watch Truman and Neo wake up, we feel pity because they just had their whole world ripped out from under them. But a game converts that pity into guilt because we were complicit in manipulating the character through the controller. And it's a jarring position to be in because we're neither audience nor puppet. We're not even the puppet master, we're just the strings, merely the conduit for the control. And that's why Gordon Freeman has all of his edges sanded off him. He retains as little character as he can, so you can pour as much of yourself into him as possible, and Valve hands that empty vessel to the G-Man, a pale figure who lurks at the edges of the game, who ended Half-Life 1 by putting Gordon in stasis and hiring him without consent. And the point of making Gordon a vessel is to make it so you're the one following the G-Man's orders. I always feel a chill run down my spine when I spot him, and no matter what I do, he never responds or interacts, only observes, leaving me with only one choice: to continue on and keep playing his game. Unlike BioShock, I could see the strings the whole time, and I still felt uneasy whenever I was forced to play along. Atlas's entire scheme falls apart if we catch on too quickly, whereas G-Man doesn't mind the audience, because it's not our ignorance that's keeping us in line. And then it culminates in the ending of Half-Life 2, where the G-Man says the quiet part out loud.
Rather than offer you the illusion of free choice, I will take the liberty of choosing for you. If and when your time comes round again.
He's politely announcing his manipulation because he knows there's nothing you can do about it. The only way to beat him is to walk away from the game, and he knows you're not going to do that. In fact, there's something meta about how he turns Gordon off, by putting him in stasis, only letting him out when he's needed. It's almost like the terms of the G-Man's employment are the same terms we agree to when we play the game. We report for duty when the game is on, and when it's off, we no longer exist. And when G-Man is done with you, he politely puts you back behind the glass of your screen. Metal Gear Solid 2 smashes the glass and reaches through the screen to mess with your head directly. Kojima once said, quote, "As a creator, I always want to betray fans' expectations," and in 2001 he did that and more. In fact, his manipulation started before we even played the game, with the marketing promising us the return of Solid Snake, before he gets swapped out and we play as Raiden. And Raiden's VR training missions recreate the events of MGS1. This is Kojima welding us and Raiden together, giving us a shared experience and skill set. In the game, this is called the S3 Plan, or Solid Snake Simulation, but in a classic Kojima twist, it's revealed to be the selection for societal sanity, testing whether behavior and belief can be sculpted through the control of information. And Metal Gear Solid 2 itself is an experiment in information control run on you. Then, near the end of the game, the codec starts to break down as your trusted handler, the kernel, starts to malfunction, until the immersion finally snaps with the line,
Raiden, turn the game console off right now.
What did you say?
The mission is a failure. Cut the power right now.
This is the game violating the border between fiction and reality, because once your own hardware seems to be failing, you can't trust the system feeding you information any more than Raiden can trust the kernel. And once it's done, you play as naked Raiden, stripped of everything including your dignity, as you realize just how much Kojima has been playing you, until Raiden asserts himself by declaring,
I'll decide for myself what to believe and what to pass on.
Which the AI, or really Kojima, dismantles with a single question.
But is that even your own idea?
Which inflicted more dread on me than any horror game ever has, because it's right. How much of my identity was my idea, and how much is influenced by all the media I've seen? Okay, you might be thinking, so what? The games are playing me? That's stupid. I'm the one who decides how I play them. And you're right, but every version of how you play still arrives at the same credits. Even Baldur's Gate 3 with tracks that look like the Tokyo Metro is still on rails. There's still quest objectives guiding you towards your goal, and maybe a splash of yellow paint to help guide you along the way. In fact, one of the core things game designers teach is how to subtly steer the player so they don't get lost while giving them the illusion of control. Even Ken Levine, the man who made BioShock, now calls it, quote, a very, very long corridor with a bunch of trigger points. And the reveal that we're not in control in BioShock, Half-Life, and Metal Gear feels so disturbing because they're the only ones being honest with you. Other games go to such great lengths to protect your feeling of freedom. Like in Telltale games, when a character says they'll remember what you said, promising you that your small decision will ripple outwards, when the story is always funneling you towards the same few endings. Or the dialogue wheel in Mass Effect, where you have the choices to do something nicely or rudely, but both get the same result. Whereas these three games respected you enough to show you the truth and timed the reveal for maximum damage. But what kind of reveal is this? One where a magician reveals his tricks, or one where a casino reveals the odds? Because when a magician shows you the trick, you just feel cheated and leave disappointed, whereas a casino shows you that the house always wins, and then you nod and buy more chips. just like we keep reaching for the controller. Knowing that we're being steered doesn't change anything. We're still going to keep heading where they're pointing. So then, does a man still choose and a slave still obey if both still choose to obey after their eyes have been opened? And while that sounds like a question about games, it's actually another way of asking the AI's question from Metal Gear Solid 2.
I'll decide for myself what to believe and what to pass on.
But is that even your own idea?
Because if my choices inside a game don't count because they were steered, then does the same hold true for choices I make outside of games? My politics, my taste in media, hell, even the way I make these essays are all carved into me by the media I've spent my life consuming. So then are my beliefs still mine when I can't tell where the influence ends and I begin? Because if my politics were shaped by my environment, then there's no longer an unaltered version of me waiting underneath to consult. But I think Metal Gear 2 answers its own question. When Snake says to Raiden once the battle is over,
"We need to pass the torch and let our children read our messy and sad history by its light."
In essence, he's saying that nobody's beliefs start with them. Every idea we've ever had was handed to us by someone else, and the only choice we get is whether to reject it or pass it on. And if that's true, then being handed a choice can't be the thing that disqualifies it, because by that logic, no one has ever made a choice. Games give me objectives in the same way life gives me what I believe. I only get to pick whether I accept or reject it. So the casino analogy is only half right, because knowing the odds changes what buying the chips means. A mark gets played, a gambler plays. So, Ryan's line is actually a false choice, because there's a third option he doesn't account for, a man who sees the strings and still chooses to obey. So I don't see obeying as admitting defeat. I see it as us being the ones who make the choice. And so because these games can't change the ending, they give us the only control they can. What the ending means to us, by making us fully aware of our true, insignificant place in the story. And now that you know exactly what saying yes means, would you kindly like and subscribe? Thank you so much for watching. For more Metal Gear essays, here's one about what the ladder climb in Metal Gear 3 actually means.